A very warm welcome to this World Game Changers podcast, where your host, Paul D. Lowe, embraces many crucial conversations that compassionately contribute towards creating a better life and world. Paul's intention is very simple: to help get people's inspirational insights and motivational messages out into the world so others may benefit.
Hello listeners, and welcome to this World Game Changers podcast episode. What has happened, as you know from the previous episode, is since that landmark episode 500, we're starting to focus in around three areas now. We're starting to focus in around the UK, we're starting to focus in around Africa, and we're starting to focus in around North America. And in the case of the latter, it's my absolute pleasure to help us unpick what this even means, the World Game Changers Chairman, Mr. Martin Leifeld. Martin, a very, very warm welcome to you, sir.
Thank you, Paul. Been looking forward to our conversation today.
So just to set the scene, listeners, how about this for a title? Welcome to North America and our 10 legs. Bit of a quaint title, Martin, wouldn't you say?
A quaint title, yes, sir.
Quaint. Where did that word come from, listeners? I find myself saying some extraordinary things and then checking myself in the moment. Like I said, where did the word quaint come from? That's how we describe things, say like quaint cottages in the southwest of England, in Devon and Cornwall, for example. Anyway, Martin, I'm waffling and I'm digressing. So, as you know, I mean, obviously not obviously, the listeners don't know that, I know that, but, you know, as a born and bred American, you are very, very well placed to comment on some of the challenges that, that present in North America. And as you know, listeners, we stay away from politics and things like that, so we're not here to put the world to rights. But, Martin, we've come up within World Game Changers what we call life-enhancing goals, 10 of them, as you know. Our 10 legs. And I'd just like to kind of have a little bit of a whistle stop and go through them and see how they fit with you as an American. And, you know, some of the things that come to mind. So there isn't a right or wrong. There isn't a one size fits all, but I think it's to raise to our North American family that this is really the infrastructure of how we're going to go forward with projects. We're going to build them around these 10 legs.
And just this, as part of just kind of establishing our conversation, Paul, one of the things that I'm so aware of is that when we talk about North America, ultimately, we're talking about just about 24 countries. And we're talking about countries that are as prosperous like the United States. And we're talking about countries that are deeply impoverished and troubled like Haiti. They all come under that sense of what the North American continent is. So while I can only speak from my personal point of view and very limited experience, nevertheless, as we go about trying to develop this concept of World Game Changers North America, and an identity as an entity, you might say, to serve North America, all those nations, all those citizens. It's far bigger than the United States. Now, the United States is the biggest population-wise. Frankly, it's about 55% of North America's population sits in the United States. But, you know, almost 50% does not, coming from all kinds of socioeconomic backgrounds and various kinds of challenges, and unique and exciting cultures and points of view and so on. So again, I welcome this opportunity, but I just want to say, you know, mindfully, our vision is so much bigger, right? It's the world when we talk about World Game Changers. And here in North America, we're talking about, 23, 24 countries, not just the United States as a point of departure here today.
That's a very valid point. It's a very valid point. If nothing else, though, I think it helps us to kind of at least draw this first line in the sand and pick it apart and as you say, then expand it. So The first leg then, awareness raising and purposeful communication. So maybe we actually come at this, Martin, from two different perspectives. One from a focused American point of view, and one from, obviously one may assume that there's going to be limitations on, your understanding. One shouldn't assume anything. But for a moment, let's assume that there are going to be, obviously, relative limitations on your understanding of the greater part of North America, or the other part of North America outside, your own country of America, if that all makes sense.
Sure. Oh yeah, I'm so excited that World Game Changers globally has established these 10 legs, as we call them, life enhancing goals, and as a framework for our focus and for how we organize ourselves. And in one sense, to whom we look to first, those who are operating in those kinds of areas. And, we're talking about awareness raising and purposeful communication. That's what we're doing right here on the first volume, you could say, of World Game Changers North America's podcast, is we're about purposeful communication. And that's certainly a strong value of World Game Changers globally, and has to be here for us when we think about here at World Game Changers North America, how to develop and grow a meaningful podcast that can support the diversity, as we were talking about a moment ago. That this podcast isn't just relevant for those of us who sit in St. Louis or Chicago, Los Angeles, or New York, but Trinidad and Tobago and the Bahamas and Costa Rica, other languages, and of course, as we mentioned, such diverse cultures. Can we develop over time purposeful communications that can reach so many more people than just kind of the American mindset? But I want to also say, thank God for America. Thank God for the prosperity in America. Thank God that we've got a few Americans that are trying to come together to begin to grow this. Now, of course, having said that, there's a Mexican who's very much involved with us. There's a Canadian very much involved with us. So we're not just, United States in the infancy of our organization, but we did create a 501c3 as a legal entity to raise funds through, to support all the activities that might emerge over time for North America. But yeah, purposeful communication. Now, the United States is famous for scattered communication of all kinds. It's, an overwhelming amount of communication that's purposeless, or of a purpose that you wish was not being presented and brought to the attention of the globe. We produce all kinds of content, the good, the bad, the ugly, the very best, the very worst. So certainly here with World Game Changers, we want to be purposeful about our communication, represent the mission, vision, and values of World Game Changers, and to be able to bring, that unique set of energy and life and perspective that we believe World Game Changers has to offer to the lives of as broad an array of North American human beings as possible.
And that raises an excellent point. And there was a little bit of devil's advocate at the top of this conversation, Martin, and that obviously you eloquently kind of put the situation right. But I deliberately played devil's advocate on that sort of perception. And I know I speak for a lot of Brits with this, that there is North America, which is America, and everything else is South America, including Canada. Well, now it's not, so I deliberately kind of set that scene to say, everybody focuses in on America. Oh, that's North America. And then everything else is the South. So anyway, just a little tease there.
Well, and I understand that mindset. And now remember, audience, if you don't know, those of you who might be checking in from other parts of the world, get out your map. Canada is actually north of the United States. But having said that, I think it's a point well taken. And ladies and gentlemen, you should know Paul and I, as kind of the instigators of World Game Changers, you might say, we tease each other constantly. So if that comes out today, we apologize or enjoy it and laugh at us as much as with us.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we won't mention music, Martin. We'll save that till the end. So let's move on to leg 2 then. Expanding good health and well-being.
Well, it's certainly when I think about what we're doing with World Game Changers and who we're already bringing together in our small team organizationally here with World Game Changers North America, I think a balanced life is really something that we're focused upon. So, we're people who understand we have to love ourselves in order to love and serve others powerfully. That we need to take time to take care of ourselves, and that includes preparing for each day wisely, thoughtfully. It includes things like meditation and prayer and study and reflection, journaling, all those kinds of things that help us to stay centered as individuals so that we can be of service to others. And that's universal, right, Paul? I mean, that's universal. And that doesn't require, in some respects, a gymnasium. That requires our making a decision and developing practices, regardless of where we're located in this world. And in terms of conveniences, resources, all of it, you can be the poorest person in the world and benefit enormously from meditation, for instance. As the wealthiest sitting on the top of a skyscraper in a penthouse in New York City. So, focusing on one's well-being is something that we're mindful of, and we're practitioners, I would say, certainly. When I think about the core of group of people that place a balanced life as really a high value. So that's certainly, we want to live that, manifest it, and encourage it.
Absolutely. Number 3, self-empowering C, opportunities, and C, listeners, being an acronym for sport, education, and employment.
Well, that's yeah. I love this particular leg because there's so much running room, but we're often running. I should say to the listeners, World Game Changers North America as an entity, we've had 36 meetings or so. In fact, I think we've had 36 meetings that we've been tracking. Lots and lots of conversations and meetings outside of it, but 36 kind of regular meetings where we've tried to kind of be family together and consider what this might unfold to be. And one of the first initiatives is around education, you could say, and that is developing hopefully a series of children's books that are going to focus and present, you might say, encouragement to children and their parents, the readers that are reading these books, to live balanced lives of self-respect and respect for others. And not to steal our thunder prematurely, but the people who are working on this have developed a marvelous concept around, as you like to say, Paul, a child of the universe, and the fundamental values of love, self-respect, and caring for others. So the first book we hope to see out later this fall, and we're going to go from there. But we're very excited about the concept as a way of helping young people. And while they're going to be valuable and meaningful, I think for people of all ages, they're designed first and foremost for preschool age children, you might say. Children, 2, 3 to 5, 6, and so that they're exposed in the earliest messaging that they receive. They're also can be exposed to, messages that are really after telling them that they're loved through and through. Everything about them is lovable, and to encourage them to extend that love to others. So we're very excited about this as a first step, as a step that we can do as a group. And it's flowing out of people who have unique backgrounds in working with children, and in some cases children with challenges, that can bring life and hope to all children from the lessons they've learned and observed working with children and being children themselves. Because frankly, we're all children. We might be different age-wise, but we're all children. And so, yeah, no, we're excited, very excited about that, Paul.
Brings in humorously, or maybe not humorously, a quote that my late mother used to propound to me over and over again when I was just, let's say, being a bit challenging. And she said, "I don't get it, Paul. What is it with you men? You never grow up. You never grow up." Anyway, moving swiftly on. Leg number 4, Martin. Responsible and mindful consumption. I was going to say communication. Responsible and mindful consumption.
Well, yes, and I will say this: Americans have certainly taken perhaps a disproportionate amount of the world's resources in order to become what it's become, for better and for worse. And when I think about that, I think about, well, that begins with awareness. Right? We think about global warming. What can I do about global warming today? Well, you know what? You can plant a tree for under $5, have an organization do so. That's going to help, right? We can think about being more serious about our recycling. We can think about how can we reduce our footprint in terms of energy consumption. There's so many little things we can do, micro steps that allow us to grow in our awareness of our consumption and to be more mindful of it. You know, Ellen and I are dedicated recyclers, but sometimes it's shocking when we look at the week and we're putting out the garbage and the recycling the way we do here in our community. You know, there's too many bags of garbage. All right, what could we have done differently? What could we have controlled that better in terms of our purchasing and so on? And we know that plastic has helped revolutionize the world, and it's also seriously damaging the world. You know, what can we do, Ellen and Martin, you know, my wife and I, to be more mindful, to reduce our consumption and use of plastic, as convenient as it may be and is, because of its impact ultimately in what it does to the environment. So, but as I said, I think that begins with awareness, and then taking responsibility, owning the fact that we as Americans certainly consume a massive amount, and we do so around convenience because we're all so busy, and don't ask us to slow down. But you know what? Maybe we should slow down in order to be more aware, grow in our mindfulness, and better consumption becomes an outcome of our taking better control of our lives and realizing it's all not about success, and it's certainly not all about stress in terms of where we can derive meaning in our lives.
I want to give a slightly different slant on those few words, Martin. Responsible and mindful consumption. What words are we consuming? Let alone physical, food, drink, the waste products, throwing away plastic. But what consumption? What story are we telling ourselves?
Yeah.
And in terms of, just as we throw out the empty milk cartons or what have you, do we then get rid of the trash that we feed ourselves mentally, emotionally? And from my experience, Martin, is a massive generalization, and of course we shouldn't generalize, but no, we don't as humans. We don't. We cling to that story. That's never going to happen to me again. And we fabricate this story in our mind for survival. And then we wonder the negative and toxic energy attached to that, why we get ill. Because it's suppressed energy. So, yes, you raise an excellent point around the physical stuff, but there's also the internal emotional stuff that we hold on to, isn't there?
Right. And, I think I'm so glad you said that. In some respects, I was almost addressing another leg further on in our conversation in my response. But mental health is endemic, certainly in our country.
Mm.
And some of that, of course, is outside of our control in the sense of our biology, our chemistry is what it is as each individual human being. But some of that is induced because of our environments and the choices we make. And so we can exercise control about that. But secondly, to be honest with ourselves, to have the courage to be honest and to take that journey of self-reflection and looking at, those areas, those relationships, those experiences in our lives that have harmed us, that have traumatized us. And in addition, what actions and words we've taken and spoken that may have injured others, and take responsibility for it and take the steps necessary, which can include counseling and using other kinds of resources to put ourselves in a place of mental health, emotional health. If we want to be the full, vibrant human beings we've been created to be, we've got to deal with that stuff, not repress it, as you said, and it takes us into sicknesses of all kinds. But it also takes us into sicknesses of relationships, right? Our relationships are broken and damaged. We find ourselves crippled in our ability to be ourselves. And to lack self-love is one of the most greatest diseases, I think, that exists today. That we lack self-love as human beings, that we don't realize that we are lovable, we are deserving of love, and that which is in our history that prevents us from appreciating and love and being able to give love fully is stuff we should be motivated, I would hope, to try and get our hands around and address, to get free of, you might say, to put to rest, to get perspective on, to grow, to get healing on, and so on, so that we can be the full human beings that we're intended to be and have the opportunity to be.
Mm. Leg 5, individuals' prosperous living.
Well, prosperity, over here in America, we've overly aligned prosperity with money, with materialism, all the way to hedonism. But prosperity is about having a life of peace and balance, the things we've been talking about, finding meaning, being mindful. And yes, we want that. We want, and we should want every human being to have food, shelter, clothing, healthcare, the basics. But prosperity really is loving and being loved, right? It comes down to loving and being loved, to have people that love us and accept us for who we are, and people whom we love and accept, where there's trust. If we can have relationships of trust, we've got really, we're the most prosperous people on the planet. Ultimately, if we have a car, and what kind of car we drive, do we have a brand of clothing, or are we buying secondhand or thirdhand or fourthhand? They're virtually a cut above rags. That stuff doesn't matter if we have other people who love us and people we love. All of that pales. Not that it doesn't have value, but it pales in comparison. So that's what I would call prosperity, is loving and being loved and knowing in our heart of hearts we're lovable.
Number 6, purposeful partnerships and relationships.
Well, we want, on that same note, we want partnerships and relationships that are life-giving, not life-threatening or life-damaging. So, we want, actually, now that we're talking about the word relationships, the board president for World Game Changers North America, he and his wife are relationship experts. They're relationship coaches, And so when I just think about our meetings, there's a certain, I don't know, slant might be saying it too strongly, but a certainly awareness of the preciousness of relationships, whether they're more formal, as in having a partner or a spouse or a family, or more general, spreading out to the workplace and everything else. Um, uh, and I would say this too: this word "purposeful" is and it appears more than once, in our legs. Purposeful partnerships and relationships, and it's back to the fact that we each have power to determine our relationships and our partnerships. We can walk away from those that are no longer bringing life to us, and we can pursue, discover, uncover, celebrate, and grow in ones that can yet be for us.
Number seven, ethical business and entrepreneurship.
Yes, well, the word that jumps out to me there, and I have an MBA. I appreciate business and I appreciate entrepreneurship. It's the word that starts it, and that's ethical business and ethical entrepreneurship. And I think certainly in this country, and there are extraordinary numbers of businesses that are run with the highest ethics. And I've been privileged to know many people who serve in leadership capacities in many of those organizations as well, and who are people of the highest ethics themselves, and see those roles as privileged roles of service for the greater good. But unfortunately, there are others that don't bring an ethical mindset. And I think that's certainly messaging over time. I hope that we at World Game Changers North America can influence and represent. Here in St. Louis, I worked for a number of years at a local University of Missouri St. Louis, and I was a part of the initial development of an organization that's called University of Missouri St. Louis Accelerate, UMSL Accelerate. And they just launched, they've been doing marvelous work. My good friend Dan Lauer runs that group, but they've just launched the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Accelerator in order to promote entrepreneurship for those from underprivileged backgrounds who have great ideas, and to help them to scale, help provide them guidance so they don't, help them to fight through some of the bureaucracies that people in less fortunate positions who don't have the privileged relationships that many of us do have, in order to bring heft to their desires to bring great ideas into reality. And I think that's just a little local example of something among many great local examples right where I sit, of ethical entrepreneurship being promoted and flourishing. So there's and here sitting in the United States, we have such a know-how in terms of business. Wouldn't it be great if we got more and more focused on not just serving the underprivileged here in the United States and bringing that population up in terms of economic prosperity and economic creativity, but the countries that are developing countries right here in North America? I hope we, as World Game Changers North America, can bring that kind of know-how and support to those in other countries that have business ideas that could, who knows, change our lives in immeasurable ways for the better.
Yep. And we need money on the table, which nicely brings us into leg 8, financial sustainability and positive impact.
Right. Well, you can't, you have to, the world we have operates with what's called money, and it's it's currency, and we have to deal with it, sometimes like it or not. And, I think here in the United States, a country of great prosperity, we do. And I think we as a country certainly have demonstrated and can always demonstrate further generosity towards developing countries. I was just thinking, Paul, the other day, well, the two of us were in a meeting with someone we hadn't met before. And this person here in the United States has this huge passion to raise money for worthy causes in Africa. And I think that's a case in point, that here's someone who's living a very, comfortable life. But what they really want to do is make a difference and extend their know-how, their ability to gather funds in order to help those who have, nothing or next to nothing. And that too is that positive impact, as we say, with this particular leg, to use who we are, what we have strategically in order to have the greatest return on investment. And that includes our perspective of and the use of whatever resources we have for the greater good.
The penultimate one, Martin, life on land and below water.
Well, Paul, you're right. We got to have land and we got to have water, and we're working pretty hard to eliminate both in this world of ours.
Yeah.
And there seems to be, of course, particularly, of course, the leadership of the United Nations, ongoing urgent calls for the nations, from the poorest to the wealthiest, to pay attention and to take action. And I think about World Game Changers. We have, the Growing Trees Network Foundation based in Denmark that are planting trees in Denmark, but also in South America and in Africa, and wanting to scale to a very significant size of tree planting as a way of addressing this. We're a part of that. And here in the United States and in North America, we need to be beneficiaries, advocates for it, financial supporters of examples like that.
Well, last but certainly not least, and in many respects, Martin, one might say that this is actually an umbrella for the previous 9. Prosperous global communities.
Yeah, isn't that true? I think what's based on that is, when it comes down to it, we have one global community. And the pandemic, of course, as many of us have observed, was the latest way of highlighting that we're all in it together. Even things as terrible as a virus that kills, that it's inescapable. We're all linked together. And if there's a weak link, we're all weakened because of it. And that we're all in it together. And it's one of the things I love about our emerging World Game Changers organization, is we're focused on everyone. And as much as I'm proud to be an American, and sometimes that pride is challenged by our behavior as Americans, as proud as I am, really, I'm, as we used to say in the 60s, and Paul, you still do say, we're children of the universe first. All right. The entire earth is our home, not just, our particular street address and community where we might or might not be comfortable. That the entire world, we're responsible for us all, each one of us responsible for us all. And if one is weak, we're all weakened. And if one is strong, we're strengthened. And that's how we become a prosperous world, by having a mindset that's far bigger than ourselves, far bigger than our local community, our region, our nation, our continent, but that we all own the entirety of our future together. And I know that is a stretch for some people, but I think it's essential. And just, when we talked about global warming and its effects, right, we're all in it together. We solve it together, or we're going to see the continual erosion of the well-being of our planet and our well-being consequently.
You've mentioned a couple of times, Martin, and I'm really grateful that you have this phrase, these words, you are a child of the universe. And listeners, I would encourage you to check it out on check it out on the universe. Even check it out on YouTube. The YouTube that's within the universe. That's what I meant to say. Not. Desiderata. That was written in 1932, I believe. Max Ehrmann. Desiderata. You are a child of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars. You have a right to be here. And whether or not it is clear to you, the world is unfolding just as it should. Beautiful, beautiful record. And in my humble opinion, way ahead of its time. Way ahead of its time. But anyway, I digress. I want to ask you one big question, Martin, to just to finish off on, but just pause on that thought for a moment. How can people reach out to you, Martin? Because obviously within your role as chairman of WGC, extremely valued, and that doesn't even scratch the surface. But you've also got a life outside WGC, haven't you? World Game Changers. You've done one or two kind of pretty amazing things, and I know your humility will not lend itself to kind of self-promoting, but or it may do. I mean, that's your choice. But I just want to kind of invite you in, Martin, to share your contact details, how people can reach out, find out more about you. And listeners, Martin is worth finding out about. Please believe me.
I appreciate that. Thank you for your kindness, Paul. And Martin at martinleifeld.com and martinleifeld.com. People can reach me there. And I'd love to hear from any and every one of you listeners. And I appreciate your listening today.
Superb. So the big question, Martin, the big question. So now we're talking about the continent, not the country, but the continent of North America. We've been through 10 legs. In your humble opinion, Martin, it's that kind of fairy godmother. Martin, you've only got one. You've got to let 9 go. You can only choose one. Of those 10, Martin, which one would be that if you could grant a wish, right, that's the one we're going to go with, because that's the one that will have the biggest impact on not only America as a country, but North America as a continent. Any thoughts on? So it's not a small question.
Well, now you're making me sweat, Paul. Boy, I think I could make the case for any of the 10. That's such an interesting question, challenge. I'm going to go with the first one: awareness raising and purposeful communication. The world goes round based on communication and miscommunication. And we have a world, and trust flows and is confirmed or it's destroyed by communication. Relationships are advanced or they're harmed by communication. I think being aware and being purposeful in our communication will make the world go forward faster, better, and so on, and help all the others, the other legs, flourish too. So I guess that's where I'd place my bets, at least at this, this point in time today with you.
And just to finish off, listeners, Martin alluded to at the top of the conversation how we dance with each other. We humorously and respectfully, tease each other, as I've just done with Martin there. So one might say, yes, Paul's gone 1-0 up at the moment in this little game. Rest assured, Martin will soon draw level, and I'll leave that to your imagination, listeners. Martin, thank you so much as ever.
You're welcome, Paul. It's a privilege.
You'll have your own thoughts about this, listeners. Much to think about. But thank you for being part of this particular podcast episode. And all that remains now is for me to sign off the way I always do, by saying, remember, the world's changing. How will you respond?
Thanks very much for listening to this World Game Changers podcast episode. Hopefully you found it interesting and helpful. Drop a line to Paul at worldgamechangers.org with any thoughts or questions you may have, and he'll be more than happy to respond. Remember, the world's changing. How will you respond?